Open with Wyatt holding his phone, staring at a voice memo notification. Voice trembling with controlled rage as he tells viewers, "My wife accidentally sent me a 3-minute voice memo meant for her lover. By the time it finished playing, my 12-year marriage was dead." But what I did next, that's when things got truly interesting. You know that feeling when you think you've got life figured out? When everything just clicks into place like the final piece of a puzzle? Yeah, I had that. My name is Wyatt, and 12 years ago, I married a woman I thought was my soulmate, Sienna. God, even her name sounded like poetry back then. We met in college, one of those classic stories where she spilled coffee on my economics textbook in the library. And instead of being angry, I asked her out. 3 years of dating, a proposal on a beach in Maui, and a wedding that her parents spent way too much money on. We were golden. At least, that's what I told myself every single day. I built an architecture firm from the ground up. Started in a cramped apartment with nothing but a laptop and dreams that were too big for that tiny space. Sienna was there through all of it, cheering me on, telling me I was going to make it. She became a real estate agent, and we made this pact that we were going to conquer our city together. Power couple energy, you know? We decided early on that kids could wait. We wanted to focus on our careers, on each other, on building this incredible life. And we did. Last year, we finally bought our dream home in Westridge Estates. This upscale neighborhood where every lawn looks like it belongs in a magazine and every neighbor drives a car that costs more than most people's annual salary. But here's the thing about perfect lives. They're usually just really good illusions. Looking back now, I can see the cracks I ignored. Sienna started working late more often, always had her phone face down on the table, and would get this little jumpy reaction whenever a notification came through. She'd explain it away with talk about difficult clients and big property deals closing. I believed her because I wanted to. Because when you love someone for 12 years, you don't immediately jump to the worst conclusion. You give them the benefit of the doubt. You trust them. The last month before everything fell apart, she was different, distant. Like she was physically there, but mentally somewhere else entirely. I'd ask her what was wrong, and she'd smile that smile I fell in love with, and say she was just stressed. One time, I suggested we take a weekend trip to reconnect, and she said she couldn't because of work. Work, always work. I even felt guilty for not being more understanding, for not supporting her enough during this stressful time. Can you imagine that? I felt guilty. Then came that Tuesday morning, April 16th, 6:47 in the morning. I remember the exact time because I was at my office early, reviewing blueprints for what would become the biggest contract of my career. My phone buzzed on the desk. A voice memo from Sienna. 3 minutes and 14 seconds long. I smiled when I saw it, thinking maybe she was leaving me a sweet message, or reminding me about something for the house, or just checking in. I grabbed my coffee, hit play, and my entire world shattered in the time it takes most people to make a sandwich. The first thing I heard was her voice, but it wasn't the voice she used with me. It was breathy, intimate, dripping with something I hadn't heard in months, maybe years. My finger hovered over the pause button, but I didn't press it. Something in my gut told me I needed to hear this, even though every cell in my body was screaming at me to stop. Then she said a name. Fletcher. My coffee cup froze halfway to my mouth. I swear I felt my heart physically stop beating for a second. Fletcher Gaines, our neighbor from 3 houses down. The divorced stockbroker with the perfect smile and the expensive watch collection. The guy had helped move furniture last summer when he first bought his place. The guy Sienna and I had barbecues with. She started describing their last night. In explicit detail that I won't repeat here, but trust me when I say she painted a very clear picture. And the location, our bed. The bed I paid for. The bed in the house I bought. While I was in Seattle closing a deal that would secure our future, I felt like I was falling through the floor, my office spinning around me, and her voice just kept going, kept cutting deeper with every word. She laughed at one point, this light, carefree sound that I used to love hearing. And she said something that burned itself into my brain forever. She said I was clueless, that I had no idea what was happening right under my nose, But the worst part, the part that made me physically nauseous, was when she brought up a conversation from 2 weeks ago. Fletcher had asked me about investment strategies over drinks in his backyard. I'd spent an hour giving him advice, genuinely trying to help the guy out. He thanked me, shook my hand, looked me right in the eye. And Sienna on this voice memo told him that he'd been inside her an hour before that conversation. She laughed about it. They both probably laughed about it, while I stood there like an idiot, being helpful and neighborly. Then she started talking about their plan. Not just an affair, a full plan for a future together. They were waiting, she said, until after I closed my biggest contract. She actually used those words, biggest contract. They'd been planning this for months, watching the calendar, making sure the timing was right. She wanted his financial stability combined with what she'd take from me in the divorce. And then came the line that killed whatever was left of my love for her. She said she never loved me the way she loved him. That I was safe, comfortable, boring, but Fletcher made her feel alive. The voice memo ended at 3 minutes and 14 seconds. I sat there in complete silence, staring at my phone screen, watching the waveform of her voice, just sitting there like evidence of a murder. My hands were shaking so hard, I almost dropped the phone. I felt cold, like someone had injected ice water directly into my veins. The rage wasn't hot and explosive. It was calculated, freezing, precise. And in that moment I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her, not yet. I was going to destroy them both. I didn't move for 10 minutes after that voice memo ended. I just sat there, staring at the blueprints on my desk that suddenly meant nothing. Then something clicked in my brain. Something cold and rational that pushed past the shock and pain. Evidence. I needed to preserve this. My hands were still shaking as I saved that voice memo to 3 different cloud services, emailed it to myself, and created backups like my life depended on it. Because in a way, it did. This was my nuclear option, and I wasn't going to let it disappear. The first call I made was to my sister Brielle. She's a private investigator, one of the best in the city. And if anyone could help me navigate this nightmare with a clear head, it was her. I didn't even say hello when she picked up. I just said, "I need you to listen to something," and hit play. I watched my office door while her breathing changed on the other end of the line, going from confused to horrified to absolutely furious. When it ended, there was silence. Then she said 7 words that changed everything. "Don't let them know you know. Not yet." Brielle went into full professional mode. She told me to act completely normal, to go home that night and pretend nothing had changed. "Kiss your wife," she said. "Make dinner plans. Be the clueless husband she thinks you are. Because we're going to bury them both, Wyatt, but we need to do this right." The next 48 hours were the longest of my entire life. I went home that Tuesday night and Sienna kissed me at the door, asked about my day. I smiled and lied just like she'd been doing for 8 months. 8 months. That's how long Brielle discovered this had been going on. The paper trail was extensive once you knew where to look. Hotel receipts that matched dates I was traveling for work. Restaurant charges on Fletcher's credit card with timestamps that lined up perfectly with Sienna's supposed client meetings. Brielle even found Fletcher bragging about the affair to his gym buddies, calling my wife his Tuesday and Thursday special. I wanted to put my fist through a wall when I heard that, but Brielle kept me focused. "We need more," she kept saying. "We need everything." She recovered deleted text messages from Sienna's old laptop, the one she thought she'd wiped clean before donating it. The messages were worse than the voice memo. They'd been planning this for months, mapping out their future while systematically destroying mine. Fletcher called me a walking ATM in one message. Sienna responded with a laughing emoji. They mocked everything about me, from the way I dressed to my dedication to my work. The work that paid for everything she enjoyed. They had pet names for me. Sad ones. Cruel ones. By Thursday night, Brielle had built a case that would make any lawyer weep with joy. But the breaking point came Wednesday evening. I sat in my car 2 blocks from my house, watching. Sienna was hosting a supposed girls' night. I saw Fletcher's car parked on the next street over. Then I watched him sneak through our backyard gate like a thief. That's when I stopped feeling hurt and started feeling powerful. Game over. Friday night, I told Sienna I had a surprise for her. Something special. I watched her eyes light up with this hopeful expression that might have broken my heart a week ago, but now just made me feel nothing. She actually thought I was going to suggest we start trying for kids. She'd been pushing for it lately, probably because it would lock down the financial arrangement she wanted. I told her I'd invited some people over for an important announcement, and she bought it completely. She even wore the dress I'd always said I loved on her. The performance was flawless on both sides. People started arriving around 7. Fletcher showed up right on time, playing the friendly neighbor role perfectly. Sienna's face went pale for just a second when she saw him, but she recovered quickly. Margot came, Sienna's best friend, who I later learned had been covering for her with alibis. My business partner Knox arrived with his wife. Brielle came with this knowing look in her eyes that only I could read. A few other neighbors filtered in, and sitting quietly in the corner, barely noticed by anyone, was Leonard Hartwick, my divorce attorney. The trap was set, and they walked right into it. I played the perfect host for 30 minutes. Made drinks, told jokes, kept everything light and easy. Sienna kept giving me these confused glances, trying to figure out what I was doing. Fletcher was relaxed, probably thinking he was safe, that I was still the clueless idiot they'd been laughing about. Then I stood up and tapped my wine glass. The room went quiet. I said I wanted to gather the people closest to us because I'd discovered something that changed my life. Sienna smiled nervously. Fletcher took a sip of his bourbon, and I pulled out my phone. I told them Sienna had accidentally sent me something on Tuesday morning that I thought everyone should hear. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. She knew. She lunged across the room, screaming, "No, please, Wyatt, don't." But Knox stepped between us. I'd already connected my phone to the Bluetooth speaker, and I pressed play. That voice memo filled my living room like poison gas. 3 minutes and 14 seconds of my wife describing in explicit detail her affair with our neighbor. In our bed, mocking me, planning their future with my money. Sienna was screaming for me to turn it off, crying, trying to reach the speaker. Fletcher tried to bolt for the door, but Knox blocked his path. Margot stood there with her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Some of the neighbors looked horrified, others couldn't look away. I let the entire thing play, every single word. When it ended, the silence was deafening. Fletcher tried to speak, started with "Man, look, it just happened," but I cut him off with 2 words that came out like ice. "Get out." Sienna grabbed at my arm, sobbing, begging me to let her explain, saying she loved me. I stepped away from her touch like she was radioactive. Then Margot did something I'll never forget. She walked over and slapped Sienna hard across the face. The sound echoed through the room. Margot was screaming through her tears about how Sienna had made her lie, made her cover with fake alibis, used their friendship as a shield for betrayal. Sienna held her face, mascara streaming down in black rivers. And that's when I delivered the line I'd been waiting all week to say. I told her she'd wanted to wait until after my big contract closed, right? Well, guess what? It closed yesterday. And thanks to community property laws and the beautiful infidelity clause in our prenuptial agreement, she was about to learn a very expensive lesson. Then I gestured to the corner where Leonard Hartwick had been sitting quietly this entire time, watching everything unfold with professional detachment. Leonard stood up with his briefcase and explained the situation in that calm lawyer voice that makes bad news sound like a weather report. Divorce papers were ready. The prenup she'd signed 12 years ago had an ironclad infidelity clause that she'd invalidated the moment she touched Fletcher. The house stayed with me. The savings stayed with me. The investments stayed with me. She had 72 hours to pack her things and leave. Sienna collapsed onto the couch, her whole body shaking with sobs, but I felt nothing. Nothing except cold satisfaction. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Knox stepped forward next, and I watched Fletcher's face go from panic to pure terror. Knox explained that he'd already contacted Fletcher's firm about some interesting patterns he'd noticed. Sienna had been feeding Fletcher insider information from her real estate clients. Information about upcoming developments and zoning changes. Fletcher had been trading on that information. The firm's compliance department was very interested in having a conversation with him. I watched the realization hit Fletcher like a truck. His career was over. Then came the part that really made this whole thing poetic. Fletcher's ex-wife, the one he'd been paying alimony to for 3 years, had received an anonymous package containing evidence of his affair and financial situation. She was already in talks with her attorney about renegotiating their settlement. Fletcher had been hiding assets, and now everything was coming to light. The man was being demolished from every angle, and all he could do was stand there and watch it happen. Sienna and Fletcher tried to leave together that night, probably thinking they'd console each other and ride off into their planned sunset. But Margot, feeling utterly betrayed for being used as an accomplice, made sure their entire social circle knew everything by midnight. Screenshots of messages, details of the voice memo, the whole sordid story spread through our community like wildfire. By Saturday morning, both of them were social pariahs. Sienna's family called me to apologize. Her father actually cried on the phone. Fletcher's neighbors started a petition to encourage him to sell and leave. The beautiful irony is that their great love story, the one that was supposed to be so alive and passionate, imploded within days. Under the pressure of public humiliation and financial ruin, they turned on each other. Sienna blamed Fletcher for being reckless. Fletcher called Sienna manipulative and unstable. I watched it all unfold from a distance, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't smile. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my downtown loft watching the sunset paint the city skyline in shades of orange and gold. This place is nothing like the house in Westridge Estates. It's modern, minimalist, and completely mine. No memories of betrayal hiding in the corners. No ghosts of a marriage that was built on lies. I sold that house for a profit that made my accountant actually whistle over the phone. Turns out, prime real estate in a scandal-free neighborhood sells fast. I took that money and reinvested it into my business. And something unexpected happened. My firm exploded. Clients respected how I handled the situation. Word got around about the architect who discovered his wife's affair and dismantled both their lives with surgical precision while never missing a deadline or compromising on a single project. I became known not just for my designs, but for my character, my resilience. The second office opened for months after the divorce was finalized, and we're already talking about a third location. The biggest contract I closed, the one Sienna wanted to wait for, turned into 3 more just like it. Success became my revenge in ways I never planned. I'd be lying if I said it was all easy. The first month after everything exploded was dark. Really dark. I started seeing a therapist because Brielle insisted, and honestly it saved me. I had to process the fact that someone I loved for 12 years had looked me in the eye every day while planning to betray me. That kind of deception makes you question everything. Makes you wonder if you ever really knew anyone at all. But therapy helped me understand that her choices were about her character, not my worth. I learned to separate the betrayal from my identity. As for Sienna, I heard through mutual connections that she lost her real estate license for 6 months due to ethics violations. She moved back in with her parents at 34 years old, and last I heard, she's working retail at a department store. The woman who wanted financial security and passion ended up with neither. Fletcher relocated 2 states away after his firm let him go. His reputation in finance was destroyed, and apparently, he's bouncing between contract jobs that pay a fraction of what he used to make. They haven't spoken since that night when everything fell apart. Their epic love story lasted about 72 hours under real pressure. Margot actually became one of my closest friends through all of this. She felt terrible for not seeing through Sienna's lies sooner, and we bonded over feeling betrayed by someone we trusted. She introduced me to her book club, which sounds boring, but ended up being exactly what I needed. Normal people doing normal things. I even started dating again a few months ago. Nothing serious yet, but I'm not rushing. I'm learning to trust again slowly, carefully, with my eyes wide open this time. Sometimes late at night, I think about that voice memo. I still have it locked away in encrypted files, though I've never listened to it again after that Friday night. I don't need to.